Hey everybody, Tamara and Ruth here for your weekly energy update. Hey Ruth.
Good morning, Tamara. It's good to see you. After last week, we missed each other.
Yeah, we did miss each other last week. Today's February 1st. It's February 1st, the first of the month, 2017. And this is our,
2018,
I
my
mean,
darling.
2018. Oh my God. See, this is what's happening. Everything is moving so quickly this week. And we want to say hello to our friends watching actually, they're not going to listen live because we are not live. But when you see this, hello, everybody. How's your February feeling? Especially when we had a lunar eclipse yesterday. So we are going to talk about that today as part of the weekly energy. Where should we start, Ruth?
Well, I'm having this humorous thing because Mercury's in Aquarius at the moment. And you said they won't be seeing us live, but we're over here live as we're doing this. I just had to put that in. That was
That's
funny.
true. We are live as
Over
live
here,
can
as
be.
we
Yes.
can be. Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yesterday, it's so interesting. There were so many pictures on social media of the full moon and yeah, it was really beautiful. I didn't see it yesterday morning. Did you see it?
Well, no, I wasn't quite ready to get up at, I think, 3 o'clock in the morning or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was sleeping because whenever there's a full moon, and I don't know about our viewers, but a day or so before, I'm very restless.
Mm.
I usually can't sleep. But then when the full moon does come,
Mm.
it's when I'm really knocked out. So I
Mm.
was totally sleeping because I'd stayed awake the night before because it's when it's moving into being full. So
Yeah. Well, there's
uh-huh.
a lot of tension when the moon, every month when the moon is moving into being full. I was speaking
Mhm.
with someone recently who said, I don't like the full moon. I can't sleep during those times. I like the dark of the moon. And I remember when I used to feel very sensitive to the moon phases years ago when I lived in Los Angeles. And sometimes I would feel like, God, I just can't take the energy of a full moon right now. I like the dark of the moon. There were times when I really preferred that quieter feeling for my body and my endocrine system and everything.
Well, actually, I respond to both.
Mm.
When it's the dark and it's going completely,
Mhm.
I respond to both, but
Mhm.
particularly with the full moon,
Mhm.
it's like really like the because we are part of Mother Nature, and I feel that restlessness, like the other animals, they get up and they roam around
They do.
when the moon, and I have that same kind of restless feeling.
Mhm. Yeah. And energetically, I very much felt and feel this eclipse energy. And I suspect I am not the only
Yeah,
human
right.
who is feeling that. And we're going to talk about that today. The things, because as we've talked about, Ruth, the full moon is like a pinnacle of awareness. It's like all the lights are on inside of us and inside of especially our emotional awareness. What are we so aware of emotionally? What do we really understand and have a lot of information about? I feel like that's a lot of the lunar energy to me.
Well, I totally agree with you. Having more awareness, it's like having a little spyglass and looking
Mhm.
directly into yourself.
Mhm.
I wrote a blog and I referred back to looking at the full moon with Cancer because
Mhm.
that was at the first of because since we had two of them this month, well, in January.
Right,
And
right.
uh-huh. And with Cancer, it's looking at the very heart, the very roots of things.
Mm.
Because with Leo, my way of looking at it is you don't know exactly what you're looking at if you haven't gone to the roots in the first place.
Mhm. Mhm.
So with this full moon, because it's requiring us also to shine something out. It's like looking in
Mm-hmm.
and then saying, okay, what are you going to shine out?
Mm.
Yeah. And
Yeah, because it's kind of like it's spilling out of us.
mhm.
Whatever, remembering that we are the planets, and so where is your light so turned on that it's starting to come outward and feel like a really real part of you? And I know that there's been this dynamic between the Leo energy and the Aquarius energy, because we've had, we have this full moon in Leo drama and fire, and then we've got the sun and Venus in Aquarius. We don't always have Venus and Aquarius at this time, but we do now. And so there's this, it's almost like each has what the other doesn't have, and so we have this. To me right now, there's an awareness of what we each need to be fulfilled as individuals and as our own, like being our own little star. And we also are aware that it's happening with a lot of other people too, and that everybody's looking for themselves as the puzzle piece in society and the collective.
Well, as you say that, the idea of vision, each one of us is carrying our own vision as part of the puzzle piece, because we are part of the collective, but we're part of the individuality.
Yeah.
And since we have this Aquarian energy for a time, it's also a moment to step back and say, okay, what is my particular unique vision in this whole milieu of everyone? Because each person, Leo then says, all right, you have a chance to stand and be center stage with your particular vision.
Yeah.
Nobody else's will ever be exactly like yours. And so I think that's what we're really looking at right now. Aquarius gives us that platform. And for a moment, it's like, get off of that person's doorstep and get onto your own.
Yeah, it's funny, this dynamic, because I was watching something and someone was talking about how, you can't have your own rulership, like you can't be a king in a kingdom with no people. So the ruler needs the people. It's a dynamic of how am I showing up? How am I being seen? How are my gifts coming forward? How are they being received? What's making me happy? It's interesting that you mentioned Cancer being the heart, because I'm experiencing really a continuation with this full moon, with the last one. This one in Leo is also about the heart.
Yes.
And that it's really okay. There's a simplicity to Leo sometimes for me, where the signs following the later signs have a complexity about, well, it's not just so simple as having, what makes me happy or I'm not happy. I have to figure out how my happiness fits in with others. But with Leo says, no, I'm not happy, or I am happy and this makes me happy. And it's just, that's it. Like, what makes us happy? And so I think right now a lot of people are maybe experiencing these heart burbles, like what's bubbling up in the heart? Is the heart happy? Is the heart saying, I didn't like how that felt with those people? Or, I need to feel a little more celebrated. These are the things that's okay to say in the Leo lunar.
Well, yes, and going back, because again, I want to refer back to the Aquarian. I mean, they are the polarity. They're sitting right across from each other, and so you have your vision and you have your play with Leo. And in fact, you can't really play in your own playground very well unless you know what you want to play. Do you want to swing? Do you want to be on the teeter-totter? Or do you want to be in the sandbox?
Yeah.
And so Leo, I like how you put that's the simplistic part.
Yeah.
Decide which one you want to be, and you can't be in all of them at the same time.
Right.
Unless you're going to split you up. And some people do, they try to split themselves into all kinds of, some to please this group. Now that's an Aquarian thing, to please this group, please this group, please this group.
Yes.
No.
The issue of people pleasing, I really feel is coming up. And I also feel that, and I'm going to talk about this on the radio show tomorrow, dealing with toxic influences. And because, if you think about the heart and the circulatory system, we have our lymph system that will hold toxins away from our heart, because once something gets to the heart, it's all over. And the body knows this. The total body system understands that this is designed to protect. If we have something in the blood, the lymph system works really hard, and the elimination system tries to hold those toxins away. And I realized this because I went away last week. I took a little trip down to Sedona and for my birthday, and I was so excited. And I had this kind of note about needing to detox, and I was like, yeah, okay. I'm trying to do a little detox here and there, but there was a question in my mind, like, how am I going to fully detox? And it wasn't, I just wondered, how does one do that? And then
That's funny. How does one do that?
Like, I was like, how do I do that? Because I'm just so healthy. And I mean, it just, every time I have a thought, I had that thought in my mind, and then I went down and I had a wonderful time. However, I did catch a bug, and I did have to release some toxins, through my body system. But so we have to recognize when there are things that are not good for our hearts in our environment, or not good for the spirit of us. Leo wants joy.
Absolutely.
Through the heart. And we can learn to live with toxicity and learn to tolerate what's really not joyful for us.
Well, and that goes back to the essential, again, the full moon in Cancer, going to the root, what I call the mother root of oneself, where we talk about, because essentially we have to learn to nurture ourselves, and we have to learn to nurture others. That's the first step, because I think this, as you pointed out, every one of the moons are really a step in our lives. So you have to get to the root, to the nurturing, then you go to the heart, and then the joy starts coming forth. But if you don't go to the root and get some understanding of nurturing, both giving and receiving, it's hard to take the next step into the joy.
Let me share my cards, because you're triggering some information from the cards right now with what you're saying. So I grabbed my Aboriginal spirit cards today. They were just right there. And the first card I got, I'll just share all of them real quick here, is I got self-respect. And this is for all of our listeners. And I feel like this card, I'll just show it. I feel like it comes up when we are called, when it's been maybe a little bit of a rough road to find this and find a sense of true self-esteem, where we slow down, and instead of discounting something or not accepting a compliment when someone says you look lovely, you receive it. And you allow yourself to be uncomfortable with the receiving of it if you have to be, but you still receive it. And because there's no way you either respect yourself or you don't. And I feel like our listeners may need to hear that self-respect is a priority right now, and possibly through this lunar energy that we are really being called into looking at where are you allowing things to come at you that are not on the same level with self-respect. And I also got ancestral wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is the information that's, resides in our DNA, from how I see this, and that you were talking about the root and Cancer, and the
Yes.
fourth
Yes.
house, the bottom
That's
of
right.
the chart is that root system. This is a little complicated, but deep down we know what's good for us, and there also may be some competing stuff inside the DNA that we've been handed around stress patterns, depending on what our ancestors went through. We may struggle sometimes to find the self-respect inside the ancestral wisdom, but it's there. It is there. And there's a sorting process I feel like some people may be going through that's pretty deep, and it is in the root, and seeking the roots that are healthy and that are going to sustain us, and not going to, there's so many people I talk to who have the voices in their heads from childhood that just didn't make them feel okay, or like they could expect to have self-respect.
Those are brilliant cards, because it is at the heart of the fourth house, and it is at the heart of the very nurturing, we might call it the mother archetype, which we all embody, both male, female. And if that does not occur, I think that self acknowledgement, self-respect, self-esteem, because it boils down to self-love. I think inside self-respect is self-love. And that's where the moon in Leo comes in, to understand that, really, because you can only understand it, as you pointed out, through joy. It's interesting. It cannot be understood with the mental process. It can only.
Yeah, and Leo is the inner child too.
That's right.
Leo
That's right.
is signified by a young person in ourselves, and
or the wise self. I'd say, in some studies, and I'm going to bring my card up right quick.
Yeah.
It's called the Holy Grail.
Oh.
Yes, and the first card, I'm using a deck that I don't use too often, but I got the Hierophant. This is from the Cosmos deck, and it's both the inner child and the inner wisdom, and this is the Hierophant, and this would be that need to understand it both from emotional, psychological, and soul spirit at the very same time. And
yeah, well, because the heart is it's not a place of rationalizations. I like that card a lot. And Leo rules the heart, and the heart has, if you look at Heart Math Institute in California, or actually, I don't think there's another thing like that, where they study how resonance, that the heart is a second brain, that it is the place that has the wisdom, like you are saying, it is wise, and it also is joyful in that childlike part of us. The third card that I got is responsibility. And it's interesting to get these cards. I saw a really interesting video with Will Smith, the actor, that was circulating on social media. And he was saying that people get responsibility and fault mixed up in their lives. And that, say you have abusive things that happen to you in childhood, those are not your fault, but your life moving forward and loving yourself and taking care of yourself are your responsibility.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Yes.
It really was. It's a great piece, because and I think one thing that happens, and for whatever reason this is coming up as our topic, say someone takes your self-respect away at some point in your life, or they affect you, usually when you're vulnerable, when you're younger. If something happens where you feel shamed or humiliated or belittled or whatever it is, bullied, it feels like your self-respect has been taken, and that you are powerless to change it. And I think that's where the responsibility card is coming in for us, is to remember that the shifting into the best parts of our ancestral wisdom and our roots is our responsibility.
Yes.
We must decide. I've said this to clients for years, that we can talk and talk and talk about wanting to feel good and wanting to feel happy and wanting to make choices that make us happy. But ultimately, it's a decision. We have to decide, I'm going to put myself as number one. I'm not going to allow people to walk all over me, or I'm not going to allow myself to put everything in front of me and myself last anymore.
And I'm glad you said that, because I want to point out, if we use the symbolism, because that's what we're using, our cards, the astrological charts profile, the sun represents that declaration of, I am number one in my life, no matter what has gone on and no matter how difficult, because yes, I totally agree that there are challenges, that there are obstacles, that there are blockages.
Yeah.
But you picked up that responsibility. If you divide the word up, you get response ability. Right. What is each of our ability to respond to whatever it is that's taking place?
Sorry about that. Yes.
And if we don't respond, we can either make it, because it comes down to another keyword, choice.
Yeah.
How do I choose to respond?
Yes.
To what has been handed here?
Yes.
To me.
Because that is the beauty and the scary of life, is that we get to respond all the time. And it's funny, because I had a moment of some moments of unhappiness, I don't know, sometime recently, where I wasn't feeling well, and I was kind of grumpy, and this is a very typical thing that happens inside our human minds, is you'll have a feeling, and then you'll run through the movies in your mind to see which story it belongs to. And so I just chose, a story and a person, and I was just on the verge, I was just thinking of, like, well, maybe I'll, make this story real and send a message here. I don't know, and make the grumpiness about that situation. And then I realized, well, no, this is just a feeling I'm having, and I'm just going to have the feeling, and I'm not going to make it into a story, because then that's how we build that. See, that's a creation thing. That's how we, make something happen or not make something happen. So I just accepted the feeling, and I didn't try to turn it into a story. There were a few stories circulating, and I think on that day, maybe I wasn't, I don't think it was about, I think what happened was, I had encountered some other people's stories that made me feel bad. And then later I was like, gosh, I'm just not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. What is this about? And I could trace it back to, I really felt some compassion for that story. And then
for yourself, you felt some compassion for you.
Well, I also felt compassion for the sad story of another person.
Oh, yes. Okay. Empathy.
Yes, I felt some empathy, and later forgot that it was empathy, and was starting to, get down and feel like, oh, well, there's a story in my life, I'm sure, that this down feeling is related to. That is a classic empath scenario. And it was great because I could just, and I do this and ask my clients to, who does this belong to, this story, this energy, not the story, but, well, the story too, and that's very helpful because as soon as you ask that question, it's a quantum awareness where the thing that is not you lifts away from you. Absolutely. And you're free in that moment. So
I do that too, immediately say, who does that energy belong to?
Yeah, whose was that?
Is that yours?
Yeah.
I want to give us our last two cards.
Yes.
I received Temperance, and Temperance.
Yeah.
We are really, well, there we go. Temperance as a way of saying there is help on the way. There is assistance. There is what we each need if we're willing to receive. This is the major arcana card. So it is something that says we each have what we need already. And there's somebody who will give us assistance if we will allow them. The last card that I received is the King of Fire. Here we're each sovereign. Because I looked at this as the full moon in Leo card because it's a fire card and it's the king.
Yeah.
Therefore, each one of us sits sovereign. Just what you referred to, being willing to be the center of our own lives, no matter what anybody else is doing or saying, no matter what the ancestors, because there's a lot of ancestor stories going on.
Oh yeah.
But we have to be willing to claim.
Yeah.
Who's the leader in each of our lives?
Yeah, who's driving the bus in this body right now? Because it's a precious ride in this body, and it doesn't last forever. And so, how much we value feeling good is a Leo question, and an important question. And I just wanted to mention too, with the Temperance card, I'm glad you drew that because eclipse energy,
or maybe it drew me, you see.
Yeah, I mean, eclipse energy is an up and down. Woo, we're on the emotional roller coaster, and Temperance is that juggling. It is that what do I feel? It's a dance between opposing sometimes influences, and there is the angel who is regulating things for us, the higher self-presence. So we don't want, if we find ourselves in this week being very extreme about anything, that's a signal that you're too far into one of the polarities there, and you got to get centered, and just because it's this seesaw that's going like this, and a lot of us may be having that undulation and that feeling of being out of balance, but that doesn't mean you are out of balance. It may just be also, remember, everybody else is going through eclipse energy this right now, so they may be feeling out of balance, and you can recognize, is that my out of balance or that person's out of balance? Whose is that?
Well, one because I know we're moving on in terms of our time. The lunar, I often look at that as a portal. We get a chance to walk in the moonlight. Even though we're in Leo, we're still walking in the moonlight. And things look slightly different in the moonlight than in the sunlight. And so it's really important to, as you just pointed out, to breathe very deeply and allow that feeling to come forth that we are in balance, even as we walk in the moonlight, and things look a little different.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. So
that's right.
And so everybody, we'd love your comments and your questions. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, like, and share it. And I always put the links below to have a reading with Ruth or with me. And so everything you need is under there, how to reach us, especially if you're going through a time when you could use some support. And I actually have a special 30-minute session that I'm offering. I'll try to remember to put the link below as well. And I know Ruth has special things.
Yes, I do a star guiding session, complimentary session.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, so we would love to stay in conversation with you. Let us know how this lunar eclipse is affecting you. Remember, you don't have to process it all at once. This is a big event that just happened. We just had the crest of the wave, and now we have months to process it through.
Right.
So we're here for you, and we hope you enjoyed watching, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.